Welcome, sentient beings from all known universes and beyond. It's time to activate your cranial downlinks and prepare to receive a raft of discussion on a cosmic ocean of science fiction and fantasy topics, interviews with local area genre devotees, and insightful prognostication by our soothsayers of science fiction, our forecasters of fantasy, and any other beings that happen to get caught in our gravity well. This is the Galactic Driftwood Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the first ever episode of Galactic Driftwood Podcast. Oh, wait. Sorry, it's the time travel's got me all screwed up. Actually, we're going to be talking about time travel this episode. I'm Bill.
I'm Jenna.
This is Charles.
John.
Robert.
And we also have an audience today, which...
Who's glaring at Bill?
Who's glaring at me right now?
Let's not introduce the audience from now on.
Okay.
But
right.
Your pun was bad. That was a bad time travel.
Right.
Bad.
Well, it happens.
And you should feel bad. You don't, though. I can see it in your eyes. You feel just
I'm
fine
very
about
happy with it.
Yeah.
So to get things kicked off, I think what I'd like to do is go around and ask everybody what their favorite time travel film is, or when you think of time travel, movies, TV shows, whatever, what comes to mind first? And we'll start with Jenna.
It's not my favorite, but I thought The House on the Lake, which was a Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock remake of a South Korean film that was extremely popular, was, it was one of those things where sci-fi and actual romance was mixed well and done a little seamlessly, and it got you thinking about time and paradox, because basically what happens is the woman is living in the house, I think 2 years after the man, but they start communicating through the mailbox in time. Yeah, and it was just a lot about relationships and doing what you do at the time now, and waiting for the right moment. And so it was, like I said, I'm not sure it's my favorite because there's just so many out there. Like, because I also think of 12 Monkeys. Yeah. How, emotionally gripping that was with Bruce Willis and Brad Pitt and what's her face? I can't think of it now. Just, it's pretty fascinating genre.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Charles?
Yeah, I'll be the same. Favorites is kind of, yeah. I will have to say that, over the last few years, I watched that Predestination movie without realizing it was about time travel. And so I thought I was stuck. I don't remember why I was watching it, but I was thinking it was just some Lifetime movie or something, because that's what it starts out at. And it kind of, so there's sort of a special spot for that one.
Yeah.
Just because afterwards I was like, what the hell did I just put myself through?
So for the audience that may not know, that Predestination movie is based on a Robert Heinlein story, All You Zombies. Yeah. And so it's kind of where the protagonist in the show is his or her own mother, father, brother, sister.
It's the whole gamut of the grandfather paradox, right? It kills him herself. She is an entire family tree unto him herself. And totally stuck in her own
poor Robert's
causality
loop.
What? Yeah, I told you that this time travel stuff was going to make Robert a little too tense.
Yeah. I actually, interestingly, I hadn't seen...
past tense thing.
I hadn't actually watched Predestination until last night. And so I told Linda, I said, all right, well, we're going to watch this because I haven't seen it yet. And, of course, I knew it was Heinlein's story, right? And so we started watching it. Well, I fell asleep in the middle. Not because it wasn't a good show or interesting,
no, it's a little
but because
long.
I was tired.
It's a little long.
And so I woke up, and Linda's like, well, you missed a whole lot. And I said, no, I know the story. She goes, you've seen this already? No, I just know the story. I know what the trick is going to be at the end. So.
But I think it's a favorite of mine specifically because I didn't know what I was
getting into.
Because if you just know it's even a time travel story, that's all it takes, and it changes your perception of it, I think.
Yeah. So were you riveted after you were watching it for a little while and you're figuring out there's something weird going on?
There's a point towards the middle where you go, okay, yeah, now I'm in, yeah. But I remember I was one of those that I almost turned off at the start because I just thought it was.
Yeah, just a lifetime.
Kind of, yeah, because it starts out very.
Yeah, whiny.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Well, it's not a very masculine movie at the start.
Right, right. All right. Well, we'll go to John. John, what's your favorite?
Well, favorite, the one that stands out in my mind the most would be Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeves.
Okay.
It stands out because the method of time travel is so murky and undefined.
Yeah,
basically,
he just pops in and out.
A guy goes to stay in a hotel, bed and breakfast, something, and he falls in love with a painting. And he gets infatuated, and he starts asking this weirdly, voluntarily information-friendly concierge about the painting. And during the conversation, Christopher Reeves gets the idea that if he wants to go back in time really bad, he can figure out a way to do that. And so he bought some period clothes that he thought were period. They're actually 10 years earlier, but we don't know.
Yeah.
And he goes to sleep in his hotel room, wakes up in the same hotel room, but it's like in the 1800s. And he goes about his business and falls in love with the woman and then gets snatched back in time. And then he can't figure out how to get back. He stops eating, he dies, and you see him reunited in the afterlife with...
So he dies in the past?
No, he dies in the present. He gets yanked back from the past. Somehow...
He looked at a penny with the current year.
Yes.
Oh, that he had in his pocket.
Which reminded him of what year it was, and it pulled him back.
Took him out of the zone. Interesting.
Yeah. So that was filmed entirely at the Grand Hotel in Mackinac Island.
Yeah.
Huh.
But it stands out because apparently with a magical fairy concierge and pure force of will, you can time travel. I like hard science fiction where there's machines that go ping that explain time travel.
Right.
This, I guess, is just as good considering we don't have any time travel methods.
I mean, if you really want to experience time travel for real, you can just go to an old folks' home. Most of them are living in the past still.
Oh, that's dark.
No, but I mean,
yeah.
Really.
Ouch.
I mean, my mom lives in one. I go see her every week, and when I go in, half the time she's back in the 1950s.
Do you get younger when you go there? I mean,
I will not say.
I don't.
Do I look younger?
But would you immediately grow older again upon stepping out of the old folks' home? Right?
Probably.
All right. So it's a totally subjective experience you
Yeah.
cannot share with us.
Right.
Well, he
You
does
have to go
become.
there.
I mean, you do become relatively younger being in an old folks' home.
True. Right. Just on average.
Yeah.
Average the ages.
Your median improves.
Yes. All right. Well, Robert, what would you say is your most memorable or remarkable or favorite?
So mine's kind of an obscure one. It's called Tom's Midnight Garden. It's actually pretty hard to find as far as streaming or copies. But the idea is a kid wakes up at night, goes out the back door of the house he's staying in, like a grandparent's house or something, and finds himself in the back garden about 50 years earlier. And meets this girl about his age, and they become best friends, and he goes out there every night, and he shows up in the daytime 50 years earlier, and they play, and they get to know each other, and they become good friends. Eventually, it kind of circles like he's no longer able to go into the past, but he finds her as an old lady and helps take care of her when he's an adult.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like they had carved their initials in a tree, and he buys the house with the tree so that he has that memory.
Huh.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's kind of a interesting. They don't really explain the method, but it's a fun story.
That sounds like one of those books you would have read in middle school, like Tuck Everlasting or something like that.
Yeah, it does seem like one of the required reading, but it was just a really obscure film.
Okay. Well, I would say my favorite at the current time would be Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt. And in that show, Tom Cruise gets trapped into a time loop, and he constantly wakes up on this military base, and they're getting ready to go to war against this alien species which has time travel, and somehow he does manage to steal the time travel capability from the aliens, but he can't control it. What happens is he lives his life, and at a certain point he gets killed. The time resets to where he wakes up on that military base again. And one of the things that's interesting you see in the start of the show is that Emily Blunt's character is revered as a hero of the war, because she's once been at so many battles where she's helped turn the tide so that the humans could win against the aliens. And we come to find out that that's because at some point she had gotten the time travel capability from the aliens. And it's when you kill a specific one of the aliens that has this capability and you get their blood on you, then suddenly you have that ability to reset time.
So it's a biological thing on the aliens that gets transferred.
Yeah.
So that's a physical matter versus I'm suddenly thinking about Arrival, where time travel is not a mechanical process, it's a perception process.
Language process.
Language has to do with perception,
Right.
and that's where.
Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, and yes.
So and which is also what Dr. Manhattan uses in The Watchmen, to be in the past, see the future, is just perceiving differently how everything exists simultaneously. So I think I don't know if it's an easy way out, but it is potentially possible because they discuss that in language in itself. So there's a linguist his family was from Vietnam, and I guess there is no past possible. I don't know the right term for it, but like, you know how in the English language we'll say stuff, I wish it could have gone this way. It
no
could have,
past tense, yeah.
right, like, no, like you're thinking in the past, but it could have become a different future. Well, they have no way to describe that in their language. It doesn't exist. Like, so the son who grew up in America will ask his parents, do you ever think what would have happened if you wouldn't have gotten out of Vietnam and gotten on that boat? And their parents are like, why? No, it happened like it happened. It does not exist. So that perception of time based on language is
Yeah, I
kind
can
of
see that.
where that comes from.
I think the Pueblo peoples of the Southwest do that too. They don't have that kind of structure in their language that, when you say things like "I went," it's more difficult than that. They have ways of doing it. It's a different way of actually perceiving how things roll out. And yeah.
Well, I read something, and this was probably a couple of years ago, and I thought it was interesting in that very aspect of what you say is how people conceptualize the future and the past based on how they're raised and their experiences. And, we will talk about looking forward to the future or looking back to the past. And this article was about...
well, all that implies is a linear view of how time
Sure,
works, which actually probably isn't actually accurate.
No,
So.
but what I found interesting from this article was that it was people working with primates, and were teaching them language and sign language, and trying to get them to express what their needs and their wants were. And they said one of the things that was kind of surprising to them was that the monkeys seemed to have a grasp of the future and the past. And the interesting thing was that when the monkeys were talking about the past, or the future, they would look behind them. But if they were talking about the past, they were looking forward. And they theorized that was because the monkeys, you can see the past that you've already had, but what's in the future is dark and you can't see it readily. And that was kind of how they thought maybe that's why that is. But I thought it was interesting that a different species, albeit one that's closely related to humans, still is able to conceptualize that but in a slightly different way than we're used to, I think.
Do you remember what species it was?
I don't. I just remember it was primates.
I mean, I know they've done those language experiments with chimpanzees and gorillas and orangutans, actually. But
you know, in my mind, I want to say it was a gorilla, but I honestly don't remember. It was several years ago that I read it. And
gorillas are apes, not monkeys. And it's
yeah. I just don't remember whether it was monkeys or apes, or I know it was primates, and that's about all I remember. I just remembered that one part of it. Something about that stuck with me, that, you know, that they would look back to like they're, you know, looking back to the future.
So what I think what makes that a little bit less popular in sci-fi potentially, because you don't see that as often, as it tends to say predestination, like everything is set. So you can see it because it's set and there's no changing it. And I think that makes people uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. They would like to think that there's a way to go back and change something or change the future, which is where I think Terminator fell apart. Actually, if I'm going to go back and say my favorite time travel movie is probably Terminator.
Mm-hmm.
But it turned out that it's predestined in Terminator. It's like
Well,
you can't. Well,
no.
it is and it isn't. You couldn't stop the destruction, but you could delay it.
That's where this series fell apart, and I think lost James Cameron's vision for what the Terminator was supposed to be. Because you go to the second one, which is what James Cameron had, and it was no fate but what you make. You can change the future. You can make a new future for yourself. That was the whole thing with Linda Hamilton's character. And then when it goes to the third one, now it's like, nope, you're never changing it. It's always going to happen. The Skynet's always going to blow up everything. And that's where I think they ruined the franchise.
It's
I
that
see what you mean. I do.
It's that idea of a self-consistent timeline. You go back in the past with the intent to kill Hitler, but
Well, it's having
the
your
fact
cake.
of you going back in the past is what creates Hitler
I
to
think
begin
she's
with.
saying that it's have your cake and eat it too. You have free will and predestination all in one, and it contradicts itself. And I see that.
I mean, because that's where you see the franchise turn into just, we're repeating the same thing because we know that's what gets us money, versus the message and the story that was trying to be told.
I think that's kind of why I liked how they took it in the TV series, the Sarah Connor Chronicles, with it, where it was even the robots themselves that were working to create a way to stop the destruction, or at least end the war in the future.
Right.
Oh.
I remember a little bit about that Sarah Connor Chronicles. I thought that was pretty good, what I'd seen of it. I just don't remember much about it now. But
Well, it's one of those series that was ended way too quickly.
Oh yeah.
Because Fox likes to kill its darlings.
Yes, I will never forgive them for Firefly.
No,
I can't.
no one will.
I can't.
mm-hmm.
Not to mention Sliders.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and they any fans of the Travelers series?
Oh, that's a great series.
Did you see they just have you seen all of season 3?
No, I have not done 3 yet.
Okay. Well, there's not going to be a season 4. But I will say that fortunately, the way season 3 ended up,
It ended in a good spot.
Yeah, it
ended,
was
you could go
perfect.
both ways.
Yeah. yeah.
I think that's what you ask for, if nothing else. If you're going to end our series, give...
End it with an ending.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Please.
Give
For
us
the
some
love
closure.
of God.
Right.
Right.
Give us some closure. Don't create a bunch of mysteries that just hang out there
Too
forever.
many good series get ended too early without any
Yeah.
closure to it.
Right.
But
right.
the neat part about what Jenna was saying is predestination versus free will. Which one do you think you have? Because, I mean, as far as it goes, we can't tell. It's
No.
like, but if you want to have future, if there's such thing as traveling to the future, there has to be predestination. Because
Well,
there is no future. There's a probability of a
Right.
future that
Right.
goes a few microseconds into that starts solidifying now. The future happens now. There is no set future because everyone's making decisions all the time. If they have free will.
Right.
If everything's set, then there's a future.
Well, and that's
But
the
you have no choice in how this all rolls out.
that's my thought too, is that if you had a time machine and I could, let's say I had one, I could jump into the time machine right now and jump 50 years into the future. Well, that would be a possible future that would have evolved without me having any impact on it because I wasn't there.
And if you did that and didn't come, if you came back, if you stayed there, then it wouldn't matter.
Right.
If you did, but if you came back and told people, would that then make that a definite future, and then everyone has no free will to
No, I
get to
think
that future?
I don't think it would happen. If you came back, the act of telling anyone about it would change the future.
So, paradox.
So, and that's where I was listening to one of the TED Talks about theoretically time travel being future, and what he talked about is how information, if you think about it, also travels at the speed of light, and nothing can go faster than the speed of light. So the example he gave is you drive one route from one state to another, and you decide, meh, actually, I wish I would have gone the other way. So you send a text to that past self before you get in the trip, and so that person takes a different route. So let's say it takes 2 days to do that trip. That change, because it takes 2 days to take effect for the person taking the new route, will never catch up with the future. Basically, all you're doing is sending information back and having a warm fuzzy that someone took a better trip than you.
Mm-hmm.
That because
Doesn't change
they'll
what you
never
did.
line up. Nope. And that's where the timelines will separate. And that's kind of what Dragon Ball Z talks about. Is that, Trunks goes back in time thinking he's going to change his own timeline, but those changes will never catch up with his future. His future is set. His world is mostly destroyed by robots, and all of the friends of his friends of his father, or fighting buddies, that's a better way of putting it, are dead. And that's just the way it is. But he gets a warm fuzzy that he has made a better future for that timeline and those people going forward.
Well, that's in part the premise for Time Machine, for H.G. Wells. He tries to go back in time to save his fiancée and never manages to do it. No matter what he does, she dies in another way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So last night, I'm gonna come in with something.
Okay.
I woke up this morning with a recollection of reading about Zeno's paradoxes.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, you don't know Zeno's paradox. So Zeno was a Greek, like 450 BC, okay? And he came up with what at the time were paradoxes about motion mostly. One was, there's like two major ones. But one was Achilles versus the tortoise. Mm-hmm. And the tortoise has a head start. And then Achilles tries to catch up. In one moment, he makes it halfway.
Oh.
The next moment, he makes it the other halfway.
Sure.
And so
I've heard this.
so he'd sell it to people. Just, I think, to confuse them mostly. But
Right.
And the other was the arrow, where he'd explain that if you take a snapshot of an arrow, I'm sure he explained it differently, but this is the modern version.
The ancient Greek cameras there.
Yeah, as you shrunk time down, the arrow would finally stand still, and therefore, motion doesn't exist. And so I was thinking this morning, there were a bunch of Greeks in the garden talking about time and motion and space. Mm-hmm. Yeah, around 400, 450, 500 BC, around. Mm-hmm. And
see what amazing things happen with the common man when you don't have Twitter to distract you.
Well, exactly. and how close it is to what we're talking about, contemplating. I mean,
Right.
It's awfully close.
Yeah.
And it took us a long time to figure out, assuming we have, but the better concepts of space and motion, right? And the other thing is, just because there's a paradox that's logical, because he does have logical paradoxes. If you read, even the modern person has trouble explaining why they're wrong. That's not how nature works. Sorry, that's right. I mean,
Right.
You've come up with a logic, but that doesn't make it so.
Right.
And so now we're talking about time. I think it's kind of fun to think, well, some of these paradoxes, we're calling them paradoxes, they're not laws. They very well could be that nature, we hit that spot, and nature just goes, oh yeah, no, you can be your own grandfather, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
You know,
Right. Right.
I guess before Stephen Hawking died, he said maybe time travel is better, but it was called the Chronology Protection Agency. Like Hawking said that ultimately you really can't change the past, that there are some laws of the universe that we haven't been able to specify that would not allow you to go back and change our at least perception of the reality and current events and the state of whatever we've made.
Sort of the idea that if you go back in time, you yourself have free will, but everybody around you doesn't. Everybody around you, because they're in the past, is predestined to act out the same thing that they did the first time through.
remembering what we talked about last show, where you, Jenna, brought up the idea of things changing in the timeline. Sometimes we perceive how things change. And you were talking about an auto accident
Yes.
you were in, and it's like, to you, you perceived.
It felt like
something.
as just moments before it happened, I could perceive it going. It seemed like, because I distinctly remember before it happened, as it's happening, this could be a car wreck, and I could see not hitting the car but still hitting the car, because it wasn't me who caused it, it was someone else I had no awareness of hitting me.
So is that like a Mandela effect kind of thing, or?
No, because the Mandela effect, for people who don't know, it's when people, like, it seems like groups of people remember history or events different than others. Like, some people think remembered Nelson Mandela dying in jail versus becoming president of South Africa, and they swear up and down, no, he died in jail. No, I remember learning that it was he became president and lived a full life. Or the Chinese tank boy, the picture of the kid standing in front of the military tank. There's a lot of people who swear that they were taught it in class that he was run over, and that started changing the political process and perception, and that the TV was turned off by the teacher because they didn't want to show them the blood. And there's other people who remember it as, no, he was never hit. That's the Nelson Mandela effect, the difference of, because they think that could, or sorry, not Nelson Mandela, but the Mandela effect.
So
what
is your
is your experience? You think?
That experience seemed to be more of just a perception of different possible timelines that was about to occur. Like, I was at a fork in the road, and the fork was either I kept driving down that interstate that night and nothing ever happened, versus the fork of I'm about to get smashed.
So sort of the idea of
Of an
possible
an
parallel universes
an
where
unfixed point in time.
Right.
Literally, you saw several different possible timeline outcomes.
That's what it felt like.
Do you feel you had any choice in that, or is it just going to play out as it was, and you just saw that there's many different ways this can roll down? You just,
It felt like a roll of the dice.
so you were
Like,
just-
I knew, like, I
you were an NPC in your own game.
That's almost what it felt like, because I thought I was protecting myself by slowing down and trying to get over. I was stopping that car wreck that I could see in my head all of a sudden, that I saw myself hitting this truck. I thought I was changing my timeline. So, okay, I suddenly could see a wreck. I don't want the wreck. I could see not getting a wreck. I'm going to adjust my behavior. And then out of nowhere, I get sideswiped into that truck anyway. And then I could see, and then it's like, because the wreck wasn't just one hit and done. It was, I was hit, and I'm being thrown for 30 seconds multiple times between the two vehicles, because I was the smaller vehicle. And I see the guardrail coming, and I'm hoping we don't go into the ditch. And I could see us going to the ditch, and it's black. Or I see my car getting impaled on the guardrail, and it's red. It's weird. But instead, we just miss it. We hit the next concrete barrier, and I hit it face forward, and it's everything from there. It was just a weird state.
Why are you smiling, Charles?
No,
that's not
I'm
a funny
recollecting.
story.
So when I was younger, I was hit by a tree, and I was driving.
it wasn't like one of those trees from the Wizard of Oz that slaps you when you take
Oh,
an
well,
apple.
it was.
The Whopping Willow.
It was a windy evening.
You
This
need a
was
tree
this was
slap.
on the West Coast, and a tree fell in the car. And I have a completely different recollection of everything than what, like, I remember the radio being on, and I had a friend that was in the car with it. He was conscious through the whole thing. I wasn't. The tree came, knocked me on the back of the head,
Knocked you out.
knocked me out. So I had hallucinations. Now the funny part, I think it's funny now, is that weekend I was recovering. and this was back when radio, I think, was a bigger thing, but the local station. And they're reading through news stories, and they're like, yeah, some guy got hit by a tree. And we looked it up, and it turns out you have a better chance of winning the lottery twice than getting hit by a tree. And it's just like, oh.
Time to play the numbers, I think.
Yeah, it was time. It's like, nope, I'm done.
You could have won the lottery in one timeline, but instead, nope. You
No,
got
I decided
hit
to
by
get
a
hit by a tree.
Son of a bitch.
But
think
it was-
it's the nomenclature's wrong. You hit the tree. The tree didn't hit you.
No, it fell on top of the car. I didn't jump up in the air and hit the tree.
He didn't like drive into the tree. The tree blew into him.
Yeah, the tree
Kind
fell
of like that
over.
sign that fell on that woman's car. She's just
Yeah.
driving her day. Probably had no idea she was going to have a sign.
There were a
fall on
couple
her car.
hobbits on the branch. Just
Yeah, and it was a huge branch. Is what I mean. Out. It was
Now,
a 18-inch branch.
when something like that happens, like to you, Jenna, or to you, Charles,
But it rattled my head. I mean, there's no doubt. So
when something like that happens, doesn't it feel like it happens in slow motion?
Yes, absolutely.
And that almost goes to the story that John told about Keanu Reeves using his mind to go back in time. Maybe time
Christopher
is...
Reeves.
Who did I say? Oh,
Keanu.
Yeah.
Yeah, Christopher Reeves.
That's a
sorry.
different time travel.
Completely
sort of thing,
different
yeah.
story. But, maybe the concept of time is just being enforced by our minds, and that because that's the only way we can experience the universe, that's how we experience it. But if we had better control over our minds, or if we understood it better, maybe we could time travel.
That's the whole point about Arrival and the Sapir-Whorf
Right.
ideas. Language actually informs you how you view the world. And the whole point of Arrival was to teach humans, at the end you find out, how to see things in terms of being unstuck in time, how to view the world in a chronological sense that eliminates linear time. And yeah, I mean, I love that show. I don't
Yeah.
know. It wasn't as popular as I didn't. It's cerebral, and most Americans are like hard pressed to keep up with it. It's not a fast paced shoot 'em up, spaceships flying through space kind of science fiction.
Right.
It's good old fashioned.
More of a thinking.
Make you think science fiction.
But really, like, the only reason I got, like, halfway through it, when I think it was after her dream sequence, that's when it struck me. It was because I had read The Watchmen and had seen Dr. Manhattan's whole monologue on time and being able to perceive time, and all time exists simultaneously.
And I see the similarities, but I think that it's like in Watchmen, people can't do it. It's like he can do it because of his mutation, and he's frustrated that he can't teach it to other people.
No, he helped her.
He tried to.
Because he could not see her past until she could see her past and be in that moment where she saw her mother and who she thought was her father, spoiler alert, fighting over who her actual parent was.
Mm.
She didn't understand it as a child, but because she could project and be in that moment, in that time and space, she could see the truth as an adult.
But without Dr. Manhattan, she was incapable of doing that. So
Fair.
it's like, and but in Arrival, they're trying to teach all humans, this is not only something you can do, this is something you have to do to survive as a species.
They sort of went with that concept with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. last season. When you look at the young girl who can, they say, she's the seer, she can see the future.
Mm-hmm.
But the way they describe it in all points, when she's young, when she's old, is that it's as if she's living in all these times at the same time.
Oh, so she's aware of it.
She's aware of every moment of her life and the events happening around her. And she knows when something's changed. It was kind of an interesting way they did it.
Yeah.
Be a lot to take.
Yeah.
No, but then it goes back to predestination, and I don't think that's obviously, unless you are also taking that and incorporating parallel universes where you can change a timeline and something else goes off and is different based off of the new information that you have, then you're still kind of stuck in the same. It's all feeding each other to make things exactly as they are. It's all happened in a way, and that's where I don't know if anyone remembers Lex.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm going to go deep down this hole, which is often the theme of many of their episodes. Anyway, they talk about
I
how
think that yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
That's a good descriptor.
No, it fits well with our theme of show titles. So yes, excellent.
So Lex, the thing that comes in to be a major plot point of all of it is that it's all happened before and it'll keep happening. It's like a cycle of time, and that there's nothing they can do to change it, and that all of these horrible things and this horrible, like, galactic empire and things, you know, there's no stopping it. Even if you beat it, the universe is going to collapse, blow up, do whatever, and it'll restart again the same way it did before.
Okay, so that and something you mentioned earlier about dice rolling.
Yeah.
Remind me, has anybody read Wheel of Time?
Oh, of course.
Okay, so I was thinking about, you know, they have their cycles of time, and it's basically the same stories replaying. But then there's the character of Matt Cawthon, who at pinnacle points where he can make a change essentially to the timeline, to the story, he hears the dice rolling.
Yes.
When the dice stops, that's when it's set.
Yeah.
That's when the pinnacle decision's been made, and the story's going to go off in that path regardless. But he has that ability to kind of alter the reality of things.
Huh, that's interesting.
I like that.
Well,
Because there's a cycle of time, and the Wheel of Time kind of just, but it's the same personas, but they can tweak how it goes. It's like different experiments and with the same characters in the same world, and that's the way their universe functions, which is kind of what Buddhist. Some versions of Buddhism, in that, yes, there's reincarnation, and sometimes you're reincarnated into a different life form or different soul, or you just keep coming back to the same life until you get it right.
Okay.
So it depends on the type of reincarnation that you go with.
Right, so like the what dreams may come reincarnation.
Yeah, well, yeah, sometimes you can come into a different life versus just repeating the same life until you make different decisions that grants you the enlightenment to go to the next phase.
Okay.
So yeah, basic straight up Buddhist thought there. Yeah.
But would you, if you had the rice,
Rice?
dice rolling in your head, would you just go, I'm going to make the bad decision this time?
Maybe.
I mean,
it depends
is
on your personality, I suppose. yeah.
but you can't go back and change it.
Right.
So if you make a bad decision, you have to live with it.
Well, what you might personally think is the bad decision might be the decision you have to make. And it's like you might be most hesitant. It might be one of the last timeline decisions you make.
And there to me is a problem, because now the dice rolling in your head's almost worthless because you don't know.
Yeah, you don't know what the decision's going to be.
Now it's just extra noise.
Well, you know what happened before, so you know you have
You
to try
do?
something.
If
I
you know
would
the histories,
assume.
I don't think he sort of did in the book series, but not to that extent. He had some knowledge of his former life,
Okay.
but not enough.
So kind of like how the Star Trek Next Generation episode where they got caught in a time loop with that Miranda class vessel, and
Right.
Data kind of was able to, and actually they
Was
were
that
all,
Kelsey Grammer on the
Yeah.
other ship?
Mhm.
Yeah.
and they all started having little tiny slivers that they could remember,
Right.
and eventually, after many cycles,
Repetitions.
they figured out a way to break the time loop.
Send
But
a message forward in the future.
Sent the message to Data, into
Right.
the computers that Data recognized the pattern as the guy's.
Pips
Yeah,
on his
for
collar.
whose decision
His rank.
they should be going with.
Yeah. That was a little far fetched, I thought.
Well, no, it was actually kind of
it
like
was
right
a
along.
fun
Well, no,
episode,
I liked the time travel loop. I liked the trying to get the message sent back, but for Data to see the number 3 and then to somehow make the logic leap that meant the number of pips on the collar of the guy who was offering a solution, that to me seemed a little far fetched.
As if Data himself is not a little far fetched.
Well, yeah, I know.
We've had this talk. Data is actually more dangerous than he's worth, and he's actually almost destroyed the ship by himself several times. And yes, I know he saved it too, but
Yes.
he's really.
You leave my
kind
data alone.
of- No, you can enjoy Data, but you have to admit
Tasha did.
there's at least yes. I knew you'd go. If there's someone
Fully
that's
functional,
gonna, if
Captain.
there's someone that's going to reach for the low hanging fruit, it's you. But
I'm
it's
just
like,
saying they were
but
good
no,
friends.
Data
Uh-huh.
was
That's all
a
I'm saying.
great MacGuffin. There are things that he could do, but you have to admit, if you like Data, he was dangerous. There are things that happened. Data.
Well, so was the holodeck.
Oh, the holodeck was causing more problems.
Exactly. So you should have like locked that down. No one can go there because you
Data
create.
was more dangerous because at any moment he could have gone. I really don't like people anymore. I don't want to have anything to do with this.
And then
So he could have gone lore.
if he decided to kill the entire crew and take over the ship for himself, who could have stopped him? Nobody. That's who. Nobody.
It would have been Wesley.
I mean, he could have.
Wesley, yes.
Wesley and the Traveler, which is the weirdest. Don't get in the back of the rape van, Wesley. Kind of thing. It's like the Traveler was creepy.
He was kind of creepy.
Come on, Wesley, let's go into the future and do things.
There's no candy in here, you liar.
There's no candy in this. Yes.
It's a candyless future for Wesley.
Still remember Will Wheaton had tweeted out, he's like, I wish people would stop saying "shut up, Wesley" to me. So
Patrick
Stewart tweets back at him, "Shut up, Will."
Wesley.
Prepare for a meme storm. You're gonna get it now. But no, there's time travel.
Yeah.
The Traveler is a time traveler, but it's the kind of time travel that makes you feel dirty and want to take a shower afterwards.
Now Star Trek has done time travel stories as we know.
Especially
has
in
Star
Voyager.
Wars? Star Wars never has done a time travel
No.
story that I'm aware of.
No.
I actually, I remember I read like most of the extended universe.
Yeah, so did
and
I.
I don't remember any time travel in there. So
Interesting.
Wow. It took. That's kind of restraint to have that big beautiful concept right there that so many other science fiction franchises have used, and just not to have anything to do with it.
Well, but if you look at the concepts behind Star Wars, if you look at the all-encompassing force that encompasses past, present, and future, it seems like it's more of a predestined universe.
Right.
So, that's how Jedi wouldn't be able to function with the force reflexes and such if it wasn't predestined. They wouldn't be able to see that moment ahead.
Yeah. But back to the whole probability haze that the future really is. Yes, it's a predestined universe.
Yeah, there would be no way for Jedi to function as they do if it was not predestined. If time travel was a thing.
With an elite staff of
Be able to
But-
use your
Force
lightsaber to
sensitive.
take out blaster fire.
Right,
Right.
because you wouldn't be able to see it coming because it
Right.
could go either way, right?
Right.
Exactly. So yeah.
Unless you're reading intention. Unless it's not so much the future, but they're, reading the intention of the action before people even make that decision.
Maybe, yeah. But
still, you'd
they
have
talk
to
about like the reflex.
calculate the
Yeah, they-
trajectory of the laser beam and
Right. They talk about like the reflexes in pod racing where the obstacles don't have an intention, but their reflexes are heightened because they can kind of see that moment ahead in the force.
Right.
Very good, Sean. We're very happy with you.
I don't think we said where Seth was. Seth is out sick with the flu, so that's why
And safe. We swear. Safe.
That's why,
he is not a head in a box
That's why Sean.
We locked him in the attic.
with what was it, Ellen Zero or
Aaron Zero.
Aaron Zero.
Yeah, him and Aaron Zero are hanging
We're
out.
referencing the movie Primer, which, if you haven't seen it, is a very good time travel show. It was filmed on a shoestring budget, I think, of $7,000. They said, and was a top performer at the indie film
Sundance, right?
Sundance. Yeah. So
the time travel machines are made of cardboard. It's kind of cool. It
yeah,
is. It's
cardboard and PVC.
Yeah.
Basically,
I think 6,000 of the budget went to those white shirts they were all wearing. So it's like,
and the ties.
Yeah, and the ties.
But it was a good show. It's very complex. We had to watch a explanation of it afterwards because it's easy to get lost with all the time travel jumps and.
Though I think Primer brings out really the biggest problem with the time traveling to the past is if you time travel to the past to change something.
Right.
Once you've changed it, you no longer have the inclination to time travel to the past to change something.
Right.
No, it would be boring at that point.
So
yeah.
that would be a paradox.
That's,
Because
that's a lot of them. They leave the boring activities for their future themselves.
Yeah.
To come
To take
back
care
and leave
of.
a ranch or
Well,
something.
I mean, in Primer, they literally had to sit in a box for 6 to 10 hours. Or
after
Hang out in the
sitting in a
hotel room.
hotel room for
Yeah.
6 to 10 hours,
yeah, so time travel, yeah, and then
They made it boring, yeah.
that
So
was a
then-
painful time travel.
Are they aging
Oh, yeah.
as they're
see.
going? So, like, they're actually a week or two older than the rest of the people that are around because of that. If you
Right.
think about it.
So the longer you time travel, the older you are in relation to the people that you're, married
like-
to or.
Well, that
Yeah, it's like the anti-salad ray in Orville, right? Rapidly ages the.
Yeah,
lettuce.
right.
We
Well,
no
that's one of
longer
those-
need to fear the banana.
Right.
Like I've always thought
How do you feel about
there's-
salads?
There should be a paradox with time travel. That the person who invents it, you can't tell anybody because instantly somebody from the future is going to kill you and take credit for inventing time travel. I mean, if you don't keep it to yourself, you're dead man.
Well, in Primer, they turned evil pretty fast.
Yeah. Well, and
like,
Primer's
yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
close to that, if I remember.
Yeah.
That you don't tell your best friend because he's going to muck things up.
Right.
Well, and so let's think of this. If you could send stuff back to the past and you know it creates, this was an interesting question. It was brought up by, I think,
Did you say stuff?
Dr.
I thought
Emery
you said
Prescott. So if
Seth.
you can send people back in the past and not have any effect on your current timeline, then in essence you could possibly send stuff like pollution. So
Or-
if you know that sending stuff to the past leads to no effect or change to your future, and you want to start getting rid of stuff, like let's say pollution, toxic waste, you create basically a time travel event. Because screw those other timeline people, it's never going to impact you. But what you're doing is you're getting rid of what you don't want now. Like, would humans do it?
Right.
And he said, well, if you look at the comments on YouTube, what happens when people can do something with absolute no consequence to themselves? Yeah,
Right.
they're going to do that.
Or this is a nightmare of mine I had a long time ago where they invented the on-time machine,
The on-time machine.
which was, it looked like a microwave. And if you missed your deadline, what you could do is finish your work up, put it in the microwave looking thing, and send it to the past.
So it'd be done on time.
So it'd be done on time. But now I had like 15 years worth of work piled up here, and it's due 30 years back, and it kept growing, and I'm not getting anywhere, but it's all getting done on time for somebody else.
Yes.
Do you know what they do to
And if-
engineers when they turn 40, Charles?
we saw
afraid I
that in
do.
that show.
Yeah.
What do? What's the joke?
They shoot them.
They
They
shoot
take
'em.
them out and shoot them.
Oh, yeah.
Float them out on a sheet of ice? Is that?
No,
Yeah.
no,
No
they wouldn't
doubt.
want that because you need people to translate, depending on the type of engineer, the old technology into the new technology.
Yeah.
Like my friend Chris, his dad is a computer genius, and basically he knew some of the original, very earliest languages, and then as he was going along, he was in the field so long he learned the new languages. He's one of the few people that can translate the old into the new, and is definitely well compensated for it, or was.
Yeah.
So that creates a special class of people, I think, that we're going to continue to see, people who can translate the old into the new, especially if they're the ones who had the patience to learn it when it wasn't so easy.
Especially as we're getting into more deeper like machine learning and those
Yes.
kinds of research.
But that's
Now-
common for any someone who's been around a while in a company that understands systems. Usually, there's a value just in that.
absolutely.
So even the no consequence, that's not a natural thing for people.
Right.
That
So-
reminds me of a big internet conspiracy theory about time travel involving a guy called John Titor. Has anyone ever heard of Titor? He
I'm a little loose on that.
he emerged on message boards in the very late 90s and started saying he's a time traveler from 2036 after the nuclear war. And the government, the remaining government, sent him back to get a computer that was invented in, I think, the late 70s or early 80s. And it could like translate code into other code or something. There's something this computer could do, and he was sent back to retrieve one and take it back to the future. Even though he can't go back to the future, because in terms of anytime anyone goes back to the past, they actually create an entirely new universe.
So they lose the address to the future that they were once in.
They lose access. And it's like you can only go forward on that particular timeline. So they said while he can go forward in that timeline and correct the future, the other timeline hopefully has its own titer from a different timeline to come forward and do that in terms of synchronicity. But the point is that people checked out what the computer is talking about, and it does exist. and it does what he said it can do. But that's just basically, you know, making your conspiracy theory have this weird consistency that you think actually has significance, but it really doesn't.
That's some deep trolling.
It was. This guy
That's
did
kind
a
of
really
impressive.
great job.
Yeah.
Especially for early bulletin boards.
Yes. And this guy had people going, and still does. It's like you'll see a couple John Titor experts show up on Coast to Coast from time to time. They're still discussing this conspiracy theory. And it's like, it makes you think about all that, about the motives of time travel, the actual means of time travel. Can you go back? If you've affected the future, and if you go, you've affected the past, then for your future might not exist. Can you go back?
Right.
Unfortunately, with time travel, it's probably going to take a massive amount of energy that no one except a collective group of people or a government or a corporation will be able to put the resources together to do, which then means you're not depending on one person to have the right morals, the right concept of what could happen with time travel, and the logic and motivation to do the right thing. Now you're depending on a whole group of people and likely a government and or organization, and it's just never going to end well.
No.
Right.
And that's the whole point of another conspiracy theory called the Montauk Project, which supposedly happened in the 80s or 90s. Big government's conspiracy took a lot of power. They go back in time, and somehow they tied that into the Philadelphia experiment. If you were, yeah.
Oh, is that God? Oh, now that was an interesting time travel movie that I totally forgot about till now. Was it called the Philadelphia Experiment?
Yeah.
Where basically when they're trying to, is it because they were trying to create the atomic bomb, or the guys who
They're
were on
trying
the
to
ship?
figure out a way to make minds not be attracted to the ship. So I think it was the Etheridge. They set up a system that they thought would stop magnetism from working on these minds and attracting to the ship. And somehow it caused time travel and caused people to melt into the decks because of the uncertainty. And two soldiers came back and...
Yeah, they were put like how many, 30, 40 years in the future?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. Like, and doesn't one of them start to lose their mind a little bit? Or
Yeah, and then one of them gets snapped back and then the other one stays. And in the end, the one who went back goes and finds the one who stayed, who started his own life in the future. And it's like... It's an interesting concept, but somehow the Montauk Project and the Philadelphia Experiment, which people say really happened, are interconnected in terms of time travel. You're smiling.
I am smiling.
It's like
I would.
you're 37, man. You've got 3 years to figure out how to do this before
I'm
someone
older than
shoots you.
that. No. I'm long past the 40. I'm long past. Yeah, no.
Then
but-
they must honor you greatly by allowing you to live.
That's yeah. Well, if you ask them, that's what it is. Yeah.
Well, the Montauk
It's a
Project,
favor. They've done me a
The
favor.
Montauk Project also somehow this very device got them to go to Mars in 2036. I don't know how.
2036 seems to be a theme here.
I might be. It might have been 2045.
No,
But it's like it was like that's important. But it's like, and they go to Mars and find a big golden statue of somebody, and it's crazy. It
sounds crazy.
in the end. But it's like most good UFO paranormal conspiracy theories. There's a little internal consistency that makes people go and with absolutely no proof. But time travel, government conspiracy. But how long would it take for the government to actually change the timeline?
if they could change the timeline, they might change somebody else's timeline.
Depends on who was in charge of the government.
No, I don't think it would. I think it's basically human nature being what it is. It's like, I mean, you can like look at your own political ideology as being uncorruptible, but it's not. I think we know that. It's like, so I think the temptation would be too great. Even if for someone who truly has altruism in mind, they might want to change something to make outcomes better for some people, but would that work?
Going back to the killing Hitler as a child thing.
Which would, I don't even know the ramifications of what that would be, although there's some good fiction that's...
Or AI
speculative.
might have sent bots back from the future to change people's opinions about certain Star Wars movies and such.
That would be unfortunate.
No, but what you were making me smile about...
You smile at the weirdest
I know, I
times.
do, but every so often somebody says something I thought... I remember reading an essay, this is not necessarily about time travel, but by Umberto Eco, and it was in a collection of something that it was sort of like a story about a guy who had to travel between, it was something like France and Italy. And so what he was doing was writing himself letters to his other address where he called himself somebody else. And he was writing, and he made up this conspiracy about the Knights Templar. Writing back and forth about he's setting up a conspiracy. And then when he died, somebody found these letters.
That is a grade A
And so,
troller.
and just,
Well,
and, now, of course, if you could travel back from the future, I mean, would that not be a temptation?
It would. Oh, yeah.
On top
Yeah.
of everything else.
Right.
How much can you screw with people?
I mean, but-
Yeah.
Would you screw with people, or would you go back and beat yourself up for some decisions that you made, and therefore change your own timeline? Or, even affecting other people would change your own timeline. If we don't split off into a whole new timeline when we time travel, can the universe handle time travel? I guess is the end product here.
so I saw a meme that actually screwed me up for 3 days. Like, you wouldn't think so, but it was that whole red pill, blue pill meme, and it says, okay, here are your options. You either go to 40 and you have like $1 billion or whatever, or maybe it was 50. I think it was 50, and you have $1 billion to live and do whatever. Or you go back to age 10 with everything that you know now. And what screwed me up, like, when I started thinking more and more, like, all those pivotal decisions, those pivotal relationships, do I still want to engage those? What if, knowing what I know now, I set up a completely different situation where I never even meet those individuals and I really want them in my life?
Yeah.
Like, it was, but then I think about all the things I could have, all the financial decisions I could have made better, and where I could be in my life, and not wasting, living healthier and
Yeah.
just really appreciating
3
that
words.
youth, having it back with
Invest in
wisdom.
Apple. That's right there.
But
Basically.
Yeah.
yeah, no crap. That and Facebook. But because I think that it's such a trope that you dismiss, I think, when you're a teenager and even a child, that you won't really appreciate what you have and where you're at and the freedom you have until you're an adult, like that wisdom. And it's a universal theme that I think it exists for a reason among humans, is as far back as we can think, where you get this wisdom and you just think, God
Finally
damn it.
Use it.
If I could have just been more aware and appreciated what I had at that time.
On the other hand, you just covered a dark place, because if you could go back, wouldn't there be people that the only conversation you'd have with them is, "You're dead to me," before they've even said anything, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Or you set
it's
them up
you.
to emotionally destroy them in some way.
But there's also
right? I mean, it'd be really
can't
easy to go dark.
I can't believe I'm bringing up Family Guy in terms of time travel, but it's like one time death allows him to go back in the past, and he screws up his relationship with Lois, and he's sad. He's like, because Lois is now with Quagmire, which is, well, we don't want to talk about that, but he's sad. He's blown it. He wants that back. I mean, it's like there's going to be irrevocable consequences to time travel sometime. And death came back and allowed him to fix it. But who's going to have death there all the time? It's like time travel, you're going to do things, and it's like there's going to be consequences you didn't think of that are going to really mess with you.
Yeah, I don't really want to pal around with death just to time travel.
Well, yeah, but it's like...
Depends on which version.
Abe and what's his name in Primer, really fast, really good friends, and depending on how you look at it, it's either like 2 weeks or 1 day. They're irrevocably done with each other.
Right.
They've messed up their
It's
entire
like
lives.
within a week.
It's like, yeah,
Well, and they got,
Well, that's because time's a
there's
lot like
multiples
money.
of each of them now, right?
yeah. So
Living in the
there's at
present.
least 2 of them in the present, right?
Yeah,
Of each of them,
Yeah.
and they have to stay away from each other.
right. Well, and if I was, what was it, Aaron Zero, who got locked in the attic for like 3 or 4 days,
Good.
I don't think I would be too friendly with Aaron 6, who locked me up.
I would just be like, I am such an
Aaron
asshole.
4. Yeah.
But Aaron Zero doesn't know anything.
No.
So it's like
Well, he got
actually-
that phone call, though, right?
No, that was for Abe.
Oh, that was
That was Abe Zero that he called. So yeah, it's Aaron Zero doesn't know anything about time travel at all, and it's so they can now go their own way without the time travel, while the other two.
But that would be one, like if you and a friend suddenly found a time machine, that would be probably immediately turn into a huge argument, I would think. What do you do with it? Because I think we all have our own notions of what would be fun.
I think it would depend on the
Or
friend and the
good.
commitments that the other person had.
Well, all right, let's say we found a time machine that could go backward in time. Would you go?
Just backward?
Yeah, just backward. I mean, for the sake of this particular argument, we're just going to say backward. This time machine, would you go? And if I say no, should I let you go? Because if I let you go back in time, you could erase me. Not even on purpose, by accident. You could destroy me.
Now
and
that's a
everything.
tempting thought.
So it's like, indeed, but you might erase yourself too. So there's always that. But it's like, if I'm afraid of being deleted from time, what am I going to have to do to stop you if you say you want to go?
You'll have to go with him.
I either have to go with him or I have to kill him.
Ooh.
Because I cannot trust. It's too. My existence is too big of an issue. It's like, I would have to either come around to your side or I would have to kill you.
But here's the thing. I don't murder people now. Why would my time traveling to the past suddenly make me a murderer?
You're not a murderer. You do it by accident. You step on the wrong blade of grass, and all of a sudden,
You can't.
Butterfly
Right.
effect.
you can't.
Yes.
You can't know it according to the paradox theory. But it's like it's not your intent, and I would feel really bad while I was killing you.
Well,
but it's
okay,
like,
but here's the
there's
thing.
nothing I could do. It's
If
like
you-
you might destroy me.
So you've invented the time machine.
Yeah, I didn't invent it. We found it,
found it.
or I invented it. That's
Yeah,
fine
either
too.
way.
Either
Yeah.
way.
Okay. But aren't you going to test it and go back first and see if you go back in time, if you're actually able to alter anything?
How do you test that without absolutely devastating
go-
consequences?
Or you go back an hour.
Go back an hour and maybe take the morning newspaper away.
Which may or may not cause further ramifications. Probably not. It seems
Yeah.
like a minor change,
Right?
but maybe I would. But then somehow you found out, and you want to go back and
Put the newspaper back.
no, you want to go back and do whatever. What would you want to do if you had a chance to go back in time? What would you want to do?
Well, I'd probably invest in something, make some money.
All right, and then you'd make
man.
money.
I am so
Is-
altering everything.
Exactly.
no
Exactly. Yours might cause a disruption in my timeline. Charles would. I can see it.
You can go full Biff.
I would
Think,
have to kill
but
you.
John, think.
You'd be a
if
different man.
you let me go back in time and invest, think of the studio we would have today.
Yes.
If you even knew each other.
I'm thinking
Yeah,
of that
but-
trip
right.
to
Yeah.
the Oasis and getting
Yeah.
that nice young blood.
Yes,
Since I'll be able to afford it now.
right.
But again, it's like how somehow your vampiric desire to be younger is going to do something to me in terms of bills going back in time to make more
Well,
money.
maybe
And
you're the
I-
one that donates your blood.
But then, how far are you going back? It's like I'm not the young man you want the blood from.
No, I prefer ages 14 to 17. Never smoked, no drug use.
Right.
Healthy, probably an athlete.
Right.
Yeah,
No
No one in this
STDs.
room.
that's like
Right.
that sounds like the weirdest Craigslist ad I've ever heard. Searching for 14 to 17-year-old healthy young athletes for their blood.
And that's what I'm saying. That's the rumor in Hollywood that because they've had this technology for a couple of years, that's what some like older multi-billionaires are doing.
It's not helping them. I mean,
Not
if you see the multi-billionaires, they look like crusty old goats.
Especially like Adelson.
Yeah.
He looks horrible.
It was-
I mean, if you had that money and young blood actually worked,
I always feel
would you
it's,
look
it's
like...
basically because
Can't think of his first name now.
like it's the emperor effect. It's like the corruption actually just makes them shrivel up and turn into weird, mutated
raisins of their former
raisins
selves.
of evil.
But enough about Deepak Chopra.
Raisins of yeah.
so. That's an interesting point. We've kind of gotten on the topic of how we start changing the past.
There's a show title, The Raisins of Evil. I like that one too.
So
Starting to
maybe
California
in
raisins.
maybe in the next half we get more into how to just skip forward into the future.
Yeah.
Skip. I mean, so what? We go past the causal link where we actually figure out how. We just have to figure
Yes,
out what we're
and
going
this
to do.
is how you could do it using black holes
Yeah.
and gravity. So
Right.
we can, but that's
That's
more
much
to
more
come.
possible. But let's talk
Yeah.
about that in the next episode,
We
huh?
can do that.
Yes, yes, yes.
And which
Are you taking Seth's role, trying to keep us on track and telling us when it's time to go?
I've been doing it all this time since you've added me to the show, and you
Yes.
just didn't notice until now.
Well,
That's
that's some neat
There you
stuff.
go.
And,
Yep.
and it's like I at once appreciate your efforts and condemn you for stifling free thought. But thank you very much.
I do what I want.
I do what I want.
You're not my supervisor.
Respect my authority. Oh, God.
All right. Well, cool. Well, we'll pick this up soon, and you guys will have to take the long way around to see the next episode. We're gonna just do it right now. But for now, we're gonna say goodbye, and we'll see you next time. Seth, you want to tell our listeners where they can find us?
You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, a half dozen other podcast services, and anywhere that you listen to us. Like, subscribe, please leave a review, because that's how we're gonna get more listeners, and that's how we're gonna grow.
Thanks, all.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Galactic Driftwood podcast. For more information and past episodes, please visit our website at galacticdriftwood.space or subscribe to us on YouTube. And now, please deactivate your cranial downlinks, collect your towels, and be sure to watch your step as you exit our gravity well.